let's start with the initiative. I know you and Brett have sort of partnered on that. Let's just
and Brightroll.
And Brightroll.
Just giving credit when it's
Thank you. That's the kind of guy you are. So tell me about the initiative, just to level set before we get started.
Sure. So we looked at a lot of discussion that is going on in the industry about viewability, and everyone understands the standards a little bit different. Everyone have different ways of interpreting the spec. And what we said as a group or a group of technology companies, is said that instead of talking, let's just do it, and let's write a code that that measure what is a viewable impression and open source it and share it with everyone. For two main reasons. One, to move the industry forward and have the code out there, and B, make sure that everyone, when they measure, because it's a little bit of a complicated code to know if an impression is viewable. It's harder to know that versus just if an impression is delivered. So what we wanted to make sure is everyone will use the same code, and by that, when a buyer and a seller are transacting on a viewable impression currency, they all say the same thing.
Okay, so let's talk about viewable. Viewable means 50% of the video was on screen. How many seconds of duration?
For 2 consecutive seconds.
Okay, you're following the IAB recommended standard. What about human versus non-human traffic?
None. As we discussed before with Josh at Comscore and Cheryl, viewable and fraud are not kind of mutually exclusive. But
yes, agreed. But I wanted to sort of clarify that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
and I mean,
so viewability is measured on top of or after you sift through and remove the impressions that are bots, spiders, and others.
Right. Okay. But I mean, it's a flexible standard. So if we change tomorrow and say it's 4 seconds, right? It's considered a view. We can change that on the fly.
This is the standard. You would argue that everything is flexible, but this is what the definition says, and what the MRC, the IAB defined, and this is what everyone should transact on.
Right, but I'm saying if on the buy side, advertisers start to demand a higher standard than the lowest common denominator, which is what the IAB is, I mean, the industry probably needs to be flexible about that, right?
You're 100% right, and I think that the mission that the IAB, that the MRC got was to gather together buyers and sellers together with the ANA and the 4As and the IAB to come up with the Making Measurement Make Sense committee to define that standard. And the idea was to go out to the market with a standard that both sides agreed upon and can transact against. And yeah, I agree with you that if in 2 years people understand that this is not the right currency, this can be changed.
Okay, I just say that because I go back to Jay's comments from the last panel that these are early days, right? So I think we just need to be clear that we haven't necessarily solved all the problems.
I think no one is claiming that we are, but we do leverage as much technology out there in order to surface the data and add more transparency.
Okay, so Tom, when we were prepping, you talked a little bit about we're talking mostly about browser views, right? Whereas cross-platform, whether it's mobile or et cetera. Can you just talk about the complexity when you start to proliferate the number of platforms here?
Sure. So right now the code, forgive me for throwing too much kind of under the hood data, but the code base that measure viewability everywhere relies on VPage, meaning kind of a Flash-based or JavaScript-based code that runs inside the player that can measure where the player is and is it in view or not. That same code runs on desktop-based, mostly Flash-based impressions, and doesn't apply to mobile and tablet and connected TV and others. And also, by definition, what the MRCs agreed is that currently the standard is for desktop-based views.
Okay. And what percentage of total video views today are occurring only on the desktop?
Thank you. I was getting there, but but thanks for helping. Yeah, so
Good job.
I'm just quoting. So we clearly are investing a lot in delivering video everywhere and flattening kind of the industry, but just calling out Q4 numbers that this is a freewheel data is that about 19% of the ad impression delivered were non-desktop impressions. I think 7% is tablet, 10% is mobile.
Yeah, it's grown like 40% year over year or something.
And clearly the highest growth is on non-desktop. Desktop is the slowest one to grow.
Yep.
So yeah, it's definitely something that we need to tackle.
So is mobile just a black hole?
one thing I can say about mobile is that the nice thing about the walled garden of an iOS and sometimes Android as well is that you cannot really run things below default because most video runs on iOS is front and center, and that's the only thing that is viewed. So you'd argue that we should lump it all in and just call it viewable, because if it is running on full screen, if we know that you cannot run it under the below default or in a non-active tab, that means that it is viewable, and by that we do tell the industry, yes, everything is taken care of.
Right. So do you think that's going to end up resulting in a shift of dollars to mobile?
I don't really believe so. I think it will just resolve in someone coming up with a solution,
okay,
us or someone else that adds mobile.
Okay. So since I have the pleasure of having a technologist beside me, I want to ask you, I want to go back to the operational question that I asked in the last panel.
Sure.
The proliferation of tags and sort of what that looks like, right? I mean, you've got the ad server, you've got, fraud, like.
Don't get me started. It's a crazy Wild West out there.
It's crazy, right? So, I mean, where are we today and where are we heading?
We are... we're in a cool spot that there's a tons of companies out there.
You're in a cool spot because you're wearing that cool bot shirt.
Yes.
So.
We're in a bot conference.
Tal totally did this. Tal did this specifically for the conference. I had to call him out on it.
Yes. And then they asked for business attire, and this is my business attire. So thanks. Thanks for allowing me. Where were we? Where are we at?
Tags.
So so we're in a cool place that. Technology is available, meaning that there's a lot of stuff that you can measure: audience, demo, in target, in view, whatever, delivered, interactivity, creative, tons of stuff that you can measure. And thanks God for VCs for pouring tons of money into the industry for allowing people to companies to do that. But on the other side, we create so much complexity for the people who need to operate all this cumbersome process, which. And as you said in the previous panel, so people are getting paid less and need to do more work, and there's more fraud and more other things that happen. So, so kind of the buyers are in a tough position because they need to suffer quote unquote all this mess. So yes, there is tons of mess out there, and one of the things that we set to do, and we invest the last 7 years in doing, is. Try to not create another box, but create a plumbing service that connects everything together and allow an agency to say, yes, I want my audience, I don't know, my GRP from Nielsen or ComScore, I want my verification from DoubleVerify, and I want to use BlueKai as a DMP. I just want to make it happen. I don't want another acronym and I don't want another tag. Just solve this word, and this is what we're doing.